biggest one is just thinking that the person at the top can fix it all. Right. That they already have seen it, they know the problem, they can fix it. No. Take the time to really understand what's going on.
Before we start the show, I have a quick question for you. Is your resume stuck in the rejection pile? At Resume Assassin, I create powerful resumes that showcase your skills, experience, and achievements, getting you noticed by recruiters. I'll also optimize your LinkedIn profile, transforming it into a magnet for opportunity. Visit resumeassassin.com today and take charge of your job search. Visit resumeassassin.com.
Thank you so much for having me, Mary. I really appreciate it.
Of course. So before we jump in, I want to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests. In 10 words or less, what is the best piece of advice that someone has ever given you?
Be prepared for the opportunity that you want.
Ooh, I love it. I love it. So many organizations hit a growth plateau, not due to strategy or resources, but misaligned people and systems. Leadership struggles, teams work in silos, and inefficiencies stall progress. My guest today has spent more than 22 years helping biotech and pharma companies break these barriers by aligning leadership and optimizing systems for sustainable growth. So in this episode, we're going to explore how organizations can overcome these challenges and truly reach their full potential. So you've spent over 2 decades leading and consulting in biotech and pharma. What's one leadership lesson you learned the hard way early in your career?
Don't go and try to fix things too quickly. Get to know your people.
Okay, can you tell us a little bit more about that? What does that mean?
I think a lot of times when people come into an organization in a leadership role, they think they already know how to fix things. And I think the best thing is, think about it from the perspective as a scientist. And again, being a scientist, you have to look at the data. So your data there is your people and the organization that you have there. Learn what they're doing, learn what's been working well, learn what hasn't been working well, and then use that data to make thoughtful decisions on how to make the appropriate changes to your organization.
And so what's the best way to really uncover that data within the company?
It's conversations, plain and simple. Building that rapport with the folks that are in the group, so making them comfortable, being approachable to them, and learn about them. I think that's the part that I think a lot of times leaders don't take the time to do that because they're so busy. They're so busy with all the other things they have to do in a day-to-day, whether it's addressing client projects, addressing revenue gaps, addressing scientific issues, that they're not thinking about how do I make sure that my people, I'm listening to them, I'm understanding them, and taking the time to really see what the true issues are, because that's how you find out. And you have to go deep into your organization. It's not just at your manager level or your supervisor level. You're going deep into the organization where the technicians and your scientists are working and really trying to understand them and understand what's going well. They give you a lot of information.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, people really just want to be heard, right? I mean, I would imagine that helps with retention too, when people feel like their concerns are being heard from the highest up in the company. They're probably way more likely to stick around for a long time as well.
%. I mean, that's one thing you find is that it's really one of the key pieces of retention. Because a lot of times people think that employee retention comes down to titles that they're looking for, promotions and compensation. Well, that's a part of it, but they want to feel valued, right? And when do you feel valued? You feel valued by the work that you're doing, and you feel valued by the organization that's supporting you. So you've got to take the time to do that. And it does take time, but it's time well spent.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just feeling valued is it's so instrumental in so many people's lives, whether or not they realize it. I mean, I think about it, yes, from a work perspective, but I even think about it in my own home, in my own life, where it's like, as a mom, and a wife, I'm doing all of these things. And sometimes just a simple thank you for making me dinner. It can go a long way, and it can give me the motivation to keep on doing the laundry and making the dinner and, doing all of the things that I need to do to be a good mom and to be a good wife.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think having that sense of empathy, right? You have to be empathetic towards your folks, and it's the same as you said. It applies in your household as well. Realizing that people are working hard, whether it's your spouse or whether it's your children, and making them realize that, and making sure that you understand that, and be able to relate to them at that level. And that's why that piece of relatability becomes so important, because a lot of times I think leaders just come in and they think that, I don't need to listen to what's going on there. I don't care about what's going on with all the other things in your life, which are important, because all of that plays a role in how they're going to perform in their role at the end of the day, along with what they're doing in their day to day. But taking the time to be empathetic, to listen, and to care is so critical. And that's really what I've done from a leadership perspective. I mean, I came in as a scientist and stepped into a leadership role about over 20 years ago. And that's the first thing I did, is just taking the time to listen to folks. And then it's something that really has helped me as I've moved on. But it has to be genuine. It has to be genuine, because people can also pick up if you're not being genuine, right? And they're like, you're doing it as a box check. This is not a box check exercise. This is something that's continuous, and you continue to be there for them and to help them and to understand. And your organization will start to make progress, and you start to shift that culture.
Yeah, absolutely. People can 100% tell if you're not being genuine, if you just go in. You're checking off the boxes, and then, that's it. And then they don't see you for another year. It's like, well, they pretended like they cared about me, but I can tell that they actually don't. So was there a specific moment or experience that made you realize that most operational challenges really are people problems?
I believe, I mean, if I think back, I'd go back maybe 10 years ago. Maybe I take that back. I'd say by about 6 years ago, when I was asked to actually bring two groups together. And this was in an organization that the company had purchased. And this was a group that we were going to eventually shut down that organization and then bring those folks over into another site. And the first thing I learned there is that these people really cared. The one for the site that was actually being shut down, they really cared about their work. They really wanted to do a good job, but they were dealing with a lot of problems, right? And so the first thing I did is sitting down and talking to them. I talked to folks not just in the immediate area that I was in the lab areas, which is one of the primary focus of me, but talking to some of the external groups, right? The quality group, the sales group, talking to all these different folks, because that helped me understand the overarching problems that were going on there, and then how to bring these people together and bring them over to the new site and the new organization that we were trying to build. And that was certainly taking that time in the first couple of months to do that was really critical.
Yeah. So if the first step is, opening up that channel of communication, what would the next step be for somebody to really step up their leadership skills when it comes to people?
Yeah. So when it comes down to it, first you step. Once you do that, and that's really the diagnosing stage. It's what I call it. You diagnose it, and then from that step, you to make sure that you have the right people in the right roles. And I think that's something that a lot of times is not done, where you want to make sure that just because someone's in that role, is that the right fit for them? Are they enjoying that role? And if not, where can we put them in the organization where they'll be more successful? And that's when you have that additional conversation. So roles and people, I think, becomes the next piece of that, because that's so important, just to make sure that people are satisfied in their roles and they're going to perform at their best level.
Totally. So would that come down to one-on-one conversations then?
Yeah, clearly. And I think it becomes one-on-one conversation with the individual and those that are tangential to that person as well. So it could have been a previous supervisor. It could have been someone that works with them in some capacity, that can give objective feedback. I I mean, that's the key piece there, is getting that objective feedback. Most of it you'll get from the person that you're talking to, but you can sometimes get some other piece of information, and then pulling all that data together to be able to make the right decision for that individual, and then making sure that that person is going to be happy in that new role. Because that's the other part. You may
Mhm.
identify a role that I think this is going to be really good for you, and they'll tell you it's like, oh no, I don't want that. That's not what I'm looking for. I want, I'd rather do what I'm doing now, or this is what I really want to do. So making could that become important, because you may find that role and it might be the right fit for your organization and for your
Yeah.
business, but if it doesn't fit for the person, it's just not, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, you can't guess what they're passionate about and what they prefer to be doing. You have to be able to sit down and have a candid conversation with those people to really uncover what it is that makes them happy, what truly lights them up, where do their passions lie, and if you can really pinpoint those things and either create a job for them or, put them in places within the company that really light them up, that's going to motivate them. Then it's going to culminate, right? If they're motivated, their team's
Domino effect.
motivated, everybody's motivated.
Percent, and you can just see that in their faces at that point. And then what they do is they start telling other people, and they become that assumed leader within their group. Like, you can do this as well, and they start doing some things that they probably never done before, but they're so excited and engaged. It's just fun to see that. It's really fun, and that's where leadership becomes very enjoyable, right? When you see that you've got people that are excited, engaged, and they're bringing also other people along. Because leadership isn't just the person in charge, it's all the other folks in your organization. Everyone is really a leader in some capacity. It's just, creating those leaders is what becomes really important.
Yeah, totally. And what I see is it feels like many leaders try to fix this misalignment with like more meetings, more technology, hiring more people, all of these things. So why don't these sort of quick fixes work, and what should they do instead?
And meetings, I mean, I'd really want to touch, but most time meetings are a total waste of time.
Yeah.
I
Agreed.
find very rarely a meeting that works that you're going to really get a lot of great aha moments. What you have are the most vocal people talk, and everyone else just, is silent there, and they might have even some of the best ideas. So that's why meetings don't work, and technology is a vehicle for things. Nothing beats that immediate ability to relate to people and to talk to people and hear what they have to say. Right? I mean, that's what solves these problems. It's the hardest, right? It's not something that's just going to be. It's going to take longer, but the results you're going to see at the end are going to be amazing when you see that, and the impact you're going to leave on that organization should you transition on is incredible as well. But what you've done is you build an organization there that's going to be sustainable for going forward. But yeah, I mean, short fixes, that's why they just don't work. And in anything in life, you think about that, Mary. I mean, I can't think of any. If you think about your health and your fitness, right? If you think you're going to just go, I'm going to drop X number of pounds and this much body fat in a week, well, it's not going to work, right?
Yeah, it most definitely won't work. So I'm thinking about meetings, and I actually made a post about this on LinkedIn lately because I completely agree with you. I think that most meetings are completely worthless. And I think about myself too, and I'm a very introverted person. So I am not that loud person in the meeting that's, chiming in and talking about what I'm thinking about and giving my ideas, especially when I'm in a bigger space with a lot of people in a meeting. So if meetings don't work, what's a good alternative to that?
I think. But when I say meetings don't work, I'm saying large meetings. So when you're talking about 5 to 7, 8 people, keep them in small groups. Either you keep them individual or you keep them in small groups where you can really get something tangible done, and making sure that when you're going to have those, that you have some type of an agenda or script there. Not something so formal, but knowing that, hey, we want to get some outcome out of this, but keeping it small. I think, especially, it works really well, as you said, for folks that may be a bit more introverted, I found that becomes really important, because then they feel like, hey, my voice is going to get heard. So there's a place for meetings, but it has to be in a smaller setting, and it has to be a bit organized as well. And again, I work with a lot of scientists. they're data driven, so they want to have a plan. They want to see things laid out. So having a little bit of an agenda there helps them too, so they can understand what they're going to get out of that.
Yeah. And I can completely resonate with that too. If it's a meeting that's like a large group, I'm not going to speak up. But if there's a couple people in there, maybe 3 people, 4 people that I'm really comfortable with, as an introvert, I'm definitely going to be a lot more apt to speak my mind in those smaller settings.
Absolutely.
What's the most unexpected people-related challenge that you've ever encountered, and how did you solve it?
It's a great one. Most unexpected. I mean, I think that the most difficult one is I moved someone out of a manager role and put them into a role that I thought would be a better fit for them, because really they were not doing a good job managing, but they had been with the organization for many years. And so had built a lot of rapport within the group, a lot of a good rapport even with clients, but it wasn't the right fit for the organization. So I made the difficult decision. And once I had done that, the individual chose to leave within a month. And it was very impactful to my organization, because what I had is what you have is then a lot, some of that individual's followers then end up leaving as well. And so it required a bit of a rebuild, which took almost a couple years to build that up. But what it did is allowed me to put the right leader in place to run the group, and then build the organization the way it needed to be done. So that's one thing you kind of learn as a leader. Sometimes you have to make difficult decisions for the good of the organization, and it might impact that person, right? But you're still trying to help them, but maybe that's not what they're wanting. But I recall this, and this was almost 9 years ago, and still remember it today.
Yeah, that would be an incredibly difficult conversation to have, I would imagine. A couple of questions around that. Number one, how did you approach that conversation with that person, since they did have a long tenure? And number two, the follow-up to that would be, did you have that conversation with them about why you were doing it, and where, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, where they thought they could be a better fit if leadership wasn't it, what they thought they might be able to fit into, or where they thought they might be able to fit into in the company?
And a great question. And, I think the thing that, what I did is, this wasn't much of a surprise to this individual, because there was feedback. One thing I always believe in is giving that feedback through the process, right? When I was saying that there were areas that I wanted this individual to work on, and didn't feel like that what I was sharing was really resonating with this individual. So when I finally had the conversation that I'm making the decision now, there was disappointment, but there was also no surprise there. And that's when I laid out, this is what I think it needs to be. This is what I believe the right role will be for you. Some of it fit, but I think what really hurt more than any in the day is this person thought my ego, it hurt their ego, right? At the end of the day, that I got moved from this role to a role that, and a lot of times people look at individual contributor roles as a step down, which at the end of the day, it's a different way of leading. You're leading by influence, rather than leading by leading directly a group of people. And I explained that piece as well, but at the end of the day, it was really, I think the ego got hit really hard, and there was nothing I could do other than saying that, step into this role. I think this will be very good for you, and then we can always evaluate as I see improvement on those other things, because this individual would still be reporting to me, have opportunities to grow and develop. It becomes a choice then at that.
So for anybody that's listening that's in a leadership position right now, what's the best way that they could approach a difficult conversation like that with somebody?
I always believe that you don't just share the difficult part, the areas they need to work on. Share what they're doing well, right? You do want to encourage them, right? There's not one person. Well, it's very rarely. I can't even think in over 2 decades that someone is doing everything poorly. To recognize for the things that they're doing well, and then start to broach this conversation that these are areas that I'm getting some feedback on. But make sure you tie it in with tangible things that they can work on, right? It can't be that this person doesn't like you or this person. No, it has to have some substance to it. You have to give a specific moment so they can understand it. But I always begin with the positives, right? The positives, and I say, here's some areas for improvement here. And that's why it's so important for leaders to meet with their people as regularly as possible. Because that way you built that rapport with them. So when you share feedback like this, it works better. And that's something, I'd say early on, I probably didn't do as much of, and I think that's something that you learn the importance of that, the value of the, it's time well spent, as I said earlier in this podcast, is that it's time well spent because you get to really understand your people and make sure that they're being driven in the right direction.
It's like a little compliment sandwich, right?
You got it.
Give them a compliment, give them the bad news, and then compliment them again.
And that's why I believe in that sandwich approach, right? Because at the end of the day,
Totally.
what I also want them as they leave the room, that they feel good about themselves. It's like, okay, I've got some things to work on. But sometimes it becomes a mentality piece as well, right? Because sometimes no matter what, there are folks that just dwell on that negative. And that's what, and they're not going to, and they can't turn it off at that point. And no matter how much you're switching it back, you have to give them that time. So they also have to have the right mindset, and sometimes that takes time, right? I mean, I've had, sometimes you have direct reports, you give them that negative feedback, and they're in tears, and they're done. And sometimes I have to shut off the one-on-one at that point. I was like, hey, all right, you need to get yourself together, and I want to, help you and support you, but you need to step away now. And when you're ready, we can continue the conversation, and also give, and that shows that you're not just giving feedback to give feedback. You care about how they're feeling, because everyone takes things a little differently.
Okay, let me set up a little scenario for you here. So imagine a biotech company's product launch is delayed. Teams are frustrated. Leadership is pointing fingers. What's the first step to turning things around?
Is really getting in there and understanding the people. It comes back to it again. You got to take the time to understand what's going on there. So first you go to the immediate group, that might be, so it might be the lab, right? If it's a quality issue, you might be going to quality. If it's a manufacturing issue, going in there. First going to those groups, because that's where maybe the issue is sitting at. But then work your way through the tangential groups, right? And that's what I talk about when I talk about a people-driven system, or the power of people, is that really making sure you understand the connectivity of everyone. Because what sometimes you'll find is that, okay, they're saying the issue is here, but as you have those conversations, you find out, okay, that wasn't a manufacturing issue that's leading to this delay here. There was a quality issue here. Why was there a quality issue? Maybe that SOP that was written wasn't written appropriately, or there wasn't proper training for an individual, right? Then you start to get into things a little more deeper. But I think so many times people stay, and leaders do this, they stay in the group that they're in their lane, rather than looking at all these pieces there. And that's one thing I've learned over the years, is that how important it is to understand all those different groups and how they all come together to help really drive that product launch, or whatever that deliverable may be for that organization, whether it's a pharmaceutical organization, a biotech organization, a contract research organization. I mean, it's never just one lane and one group.
Yeah. So I'm curious, kind of another fun question here. If you could wave a magic wand and get rid of one bad leadership habit in every company that you've ever worked with, what would it be and why?
I think the biggest one is just thinking that the person at the top can fix it all. Right. That they already seen it, they know the problem, they can fix it. No. Take the time to really understand what's going on. Talk and go as deep as you need to, rather than saying that, I've got the answer here. And a lot of times they do it because they do have experience. I don't want to take away the experience that people, that these senior leaders have. That's why they're in their role. But every organization is different. The people are different. The operations are different. Take the time to learn that, rather than to say, I need to go and just get it done.
So with AI, with remote teams, and all of these just crazy, fast, rapid industry shifts, how do you see leadership really changing and evolving over the next 5 years?
I think certainly those will be tools, right? And I think that, but those tools are as good as the data that you put in there, and nothing's going to take away the ability to connect with people, right? Because you hear a lot of things that people talk about, oh, AI is going to automate this, and they're going to, if I talk about the drug development process, yeah, we can go through and find candidates sooner. But at the end of the day, there are still going to be people aspects of who's going to have to look at that data and understand that data and be able to communicate that data to the next phase. If you look at the drug development process, very complex. From when you're talking about from discovery, okay, we're going to use some AI tools to be able to identify a lead candidate. But every step of that process, you'll be able to use tools to expedite the process, but there's going to be handoffs and there's going to be communication of people. That cannot go away, in this at the end. That requires people that are maybe not even in assumed leader roles, but those who can articulate well and communicate the information that needs to be done, whether it's written or verbally, right? And you want to use those tools. I mean, if anything, you can do to write an IND package, which is an investigation to a new drug, or an NDA package or a BLA package, anything you can use in those tools to expedite that will be helpful, but there's still going to be human input.
Yep. I love that. And that's with AI, I mean, in all parts of our lives. I think that if you use it in the right way and you actually personalize it and humanize it, there are so many good things that can come out of it. But if you don't do that, then I think that it could be really detrimental.
100%. And I think those tools are as good as the data that you put in.
Exactly.
And I think that's the part I think a lot of people think that, oh my gosh, I've got these tools. Yeah, they're great tools. But that saying, they say garbage in, garbage out. It applies in everything, right? At the end of this, you got to put in good data in there, and the data comes from what? From humans.
Yep, exactly. Could you share a real world example of a company that was completely stuck and what specific changes led to a breakthrough?
What you find at the end of the day is no company is completely stuck. Where they get stuck are in certain aspects, right? And that's really where I can help, at the end of the day. Because at the end of the day, unless an organization is completely new as an organization, they've gone through some trials and tribulations, right? And they know how to kind of to move through things, but they get stuck on certain aspects. They may not have maybe an appropriate quality system. They may not have the right leadership structure within their group, and that needs to be assessed there. And those are the things that where I can come in and support. Or they're maybe moving, a drug through the development process, and they need someone to come in to help them, make sure that everything they've done in that in that continuum or that phase has been done appropriately. So those are the things that really become where you step in, because I always give, especially I see in the biotech and the pharma space, you've got some really smart people here, right? But there may be some lanes where they may be stronger than others, right? And that's where you come in there and help. What I've been fortunate to be able to do is I can provide, because I grew up as a scientist, I can speak the science, I can understand the science, I can understand how whether it's a drug or a new or a device, how that moves through the process. But I've also seen the operational parts of it as well, so I can jump in there and help, and understand. Okay, do you have the right systems in place here? Do you have the right capacity tools in place to understand your capacity, right? And then the other part of it, which is we can't forget, we're all businesses at the end of the day, is the financial side. Making sure that you're doing the right things to actually move this into something that's going to be valuable for the company, and then downstream to the patients, or that could be impacted by this. So really, it can be in multiple areas. It can be a scientific piece, it can be an operational piece that I jump in, or operations and people I put together. Quality kind of falls in that umbrella, and then making sure that all these things address really that end outcome, because that's what organizations still have to be able to show at the end of the day. They know, so they can be viable going forward.
Yeah. If you could give a TED talk on something just completely unrelated to business or leadership, what would it be?
I would say the connection of sports with any organization, right? And again, I'm a sports junkie. I love sports, whether it's college sports or pro sports. I love it. And what you see is, the organizations or the teams that succeed, you want to look and see how is the how is their leadership set up all the way from the owner to the general manager into the head coach, and you start to trickle down in there and really being able to show that what models work, and those teams that are that are sustainable leaders year after year, or winners, I would say, year after year. And how does that translate into other organizations? So I just always found, and I do a lot of sports analogies. That's the thing. I look at sports and I was like, okay, that can apply. That can apply here. I look at some of the, being, I'm more football and basketball, really something I really follow. And I look at someone like Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady had a phenomenal career as a quarterback. I mean, over 2 decades. And people wonder, how did he do it? Well, one of the reasons he was able to do it is his ability to relate to not only those that were veterans, but those that were younger in the organization, and then working really, really hard, to build those relationships, and also showing them the right work ethic. Well, that applies to organizations as well, because people follow those types of leaders.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm a huge sports person too. And, when Tom Brady, I heard an interview with him when he was about to go on the Super Bowl. And, he said that he had prepared so much for that Super Bowl, for the commentator role, that he wouldn't even come close to, getting to everything that he had prepared for. And I think that that's something that could follow in his career. And that's something that could also be included in your TED Talk, for leaders. Just that preparation piece too is so huge.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, the best people at the end of the day. And if you look at, I look at Tom Brady, I look at someone like Kobe Bryant, and you look at these guys were really talented, but they also worked really, really hard, right? You have to, put in the work as well. And usually sometimes it's not, you don't have still the immediate success. For these folks, for these types of athletes, they had the talent, right, which helped them, but they didn't just rely on that talent,
So what's something that I haven't asked you, or what's the biggest takeaway that you want people to walk away from this conversation?
I think the biggest piece at the end of the day is to never be fearful of anything, right? No matter how big it is. I mean, when I stepped into leadership roles, some of them were roles that I was surprised that they picked me to do, right? But what you do is you take it, a step at a time, and really work through the problem. And so, I work a lot with technical people and with scientists. So it's like, break it down, and take it a step at a time, and day at a time, and work through it. Sometimes you don't have time on your side, right? You may have to do some things very quickly. And those are things that, you just have to say, okay, where are my quick wins? Where can I get my quick wins from the group? And so that's really when you have to, and that's why I say it all comes back to people, talking to people, listening to people, and listening to what they have to say. It's again what's allowed me to be able to do what I can do, because I always tell people I'm not the expert in everything, right? But I have always had wonderful people that have helped me along this journey.
Yeah, totally. Well, Kallol, where can we find you on social media?
Primarily, I would say on LinkedIn. From a personal perspective, I have, Facebook and Instagram, but primarily from a professional perspective, it is LinkedIn, and continuing to really enjoy that platform. I think there's so many wonderful people like yourself, even, that I've been able to meet, and I really enjoyed it. And I think, one thing I find with all this is that you really want to do things to learn about other people, see how you can help one another as well, right? As you're going through this, right? And it's just, I think LinkedIn is a fantastic platform, and I really enjoyed, being on there, and will continue to show my presence there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity here, Mary.
Thanks for listening. I will be releasing episodes every Monday, so be sure to subscribe on the platform that you are watching this, give it a 5-star review, and we'll see you next time.